Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Easy Scale Systems podcast. This series is called the Consulting Growth Blueprint, where we uncover insights from industry leaders, their stories, strategies, and the solutions they use to overcome growth challenges in the consulting world. I'm your host, Mo, and in each episode, we dive deep with founders, CEOs, and experts to explore how they scale, innovate, and lead in today's competitive landscape. So let's jump in. Today, we're joined by Dr. Mary Lippitt, founder of Enterprise Management, a leadership consulting firm that helps organizations navigate complexity, align priorities, and execute change effectively. Mary is a pioneering leadership researcher and award-winning author whose work is grounded in insights from more than 6,000 leadership mindset surveys. Her leadership led to the Situational Mindsets Framework, a five-factor model that helps leaders accurately read context, clarify objectives, and make better decisions. She's the author of several acclaimed books, including The Leadership Spectrum, Brilliant or Blunder, Situational Mindsets, and her 2024 award-winning book, Leadership, Saving the Herd. She's also served as a professor at St. Thomas University, George Washington University, Georgetown University, and the University of South Florida. Mary, it's a pleasure to have you on. How are you today?
Hey, Glenn, first, thank you for the opportunity for this conversation. I'm doing well, getting into a good spirit for the holidays.
Awesome. So, Mary, let's start from the beginning. What originally drew you into studying leadership mindsets and decision making? And when did you realize that there was a gap in how leaders were being developed?
I had the opportunity to work in a defense contracting firm as an employee. I had the opportunity to work for government, and I have had the opportunity as a consultant to work with many clients, and I found they had blind spots. Uh, and those blind spots were um, costly to them. There is a statistic that 70% of change initiatives fail. And that's a waste of resources, respect for the reputation for the firm, as well as internal uh, cooperation and unity. So I started looking at leadership in a different way. Most leadership talks about my style of interaction. Am I an extrovert? I'm an introvert. Or they look at my traits, or they look at my skill sets. Um, I wanted to look at the results focus that leadership had because I found people were either following the most recent book or following whoever is the CEO celebrity of that period. And they weren't really looking at what was happening in their organizations. So I took a results or outcome focus rather than the style person. Yeah, leadership was looking all internally. I wanted it to look externally too.
Interesting. And as you began applying your research inside organizations, could you give us some insight? What did those early engagements look like? What sort of patterns did you start to realize that emerged across different industries that you've worked with that confirmed that your work was onto something important?
I did a study, as you mentioned, of about 6,000 leaders. And what I found was that their focus was narrow. They were looking at one area, maybe they had intuition, and they followed that intuition. What they didn't do was collect the data from all six business areas that they have to look at. So those areas, let me just define them. New products, customer penetration, market size is number two. Number three is systems. Number four is optimization, whether that be financial return or quality. Number five is taking a look at the culture and the bench strength, their talent. Is it staying up to the skills that they need? And the last one is taking a look really at our opportunities outside of our normal realm, whether that be new strategic alliances, bringing in a whole new um, merger. I mean, just a very large look strategically at what the organization can do to thrive. I want to mention that in 1955, the lifespan of an organization was 67 years. It is now 15 years. And for startups, we know that half of them fail in the first 5 years. So I think we have to find leaders that are much more agile and much more aware of reading their situation within the organization, within their marketplace, and also a little beyond their current marketplace, because um, booksellers never anticipated Amazon. So we have to look outside of our current competitors for what can be done. And obviously, AI can have a remarkable impact. I think it has had some now. I think it's going to have more later.
So, fast forward to today through enterprise management, how are organizations typically engaging with your work?
Most organizations are looking to either become more transparent, to become flatter. I think that the old hierarchy is being clearly recognized as a barrier to success. They are looking at being able to understand certain realities in the organization. One of the things, for example, is the top of the organization always wants to centralize. Everything should come up through them. The managers in an organization want to decentralize because they want to be in control of their operations. And the frontline wants standards. Just give me the standards, don't bother me. I don't want to be micromanaged. So I think that there's a growing awareness of how different people see what is good, or there's a phrase, what's in it for me? So by the level, they will have some different answers if say, what is it that I want to accomplish? And this is requiring a great deal more listening. Now, I know that a lot of people talk about active listening, but too many people defined active listening as I will listen to you and then I'll just repeat back what you said. And what I'm trying to get people to do is say, listen, go away, come back with some new ideas or how to bridge differences, and then come back. So I'm trying to get leaders to be more creative in developing alternatives to unite energy throughout the organization.
Right. And from your perspective, what types of leadership or decision-making challenges are you seeing most often when companies bring you in?
A short-term orientation. They think that a sprint of 6 weeks can accomplish huge tasks that are really uh, impossible. I think that the whole issue of how much information to share is still a challenge. Um, I think that the amount of data that we have gives people the feeling that they have all the data, they don't need to collect any more, number one. And number two, they assume that the data covers a broader span than what data really does. So there's this feeling that from spreadsheets or AI that I have all the information I need, and they don't go out and confirm that reality. And again, if you talk about head and heart, the data can help you with your head, but leaders have to have heart too. They have to understand the people they're working with. I mean, because you could go from, I disagree with this initiative. I'll be quiet about it, but I'm not going to work too hard. They, one client is, who I was working with says, we're on the B team. So I say, what's the B team? Oh, we'd be here when it starts. We'd be here when it ends. We're not going to do much. And then you could go to support, and then you could go to commitment. And so I think that leaders with data so readily available tend to only focus on the head and really don't focus enough on the heart. Share the information, listen, um, be willing to adapt as a change initiative launches, because nothing is stable. And this idea, or the old idea, was just announce it, make it a tagline, put it on people's um, name tags, and we're just going to go for it. And the idea of changing was resisted because it implied that I, as the leader, didn't get it right the first time. There's got to be a reduction in that commitment to one idea and assuming that the world is going to stay the same as when that first decision was made. Even NASA says rockets are off course many times and you've got to make mid-course corrections. Well, so do organizations. They have to make the mid-course corrections so they can achieve the goal, because the purpose is results. The purpose is outcomes. It isn't, did I get it right 2 months ago, and I will ignore anything that begins to tell me that there may be a bump coming up. So there's a lot about helping leaders recognize resilience and adaptability um, to ensure outcomes that they want.
Awesome. And let's take a moment here. I want to shift the lens from the point of view of your clients. So, I mean, when organizations work with you through enterprise management, what are they usually trying to solve?
I get called in a great deal after the change has gone wrong. I do get called in the beginning, but I think I get called in more often when they've hit a barrier. Uh,
Hmm.
and the word everybody uses is resistance. And I'm just one example, if you don't mind. I
Sure.
worked for an organization that had, on Friday night when the workforce left, they had announced nothing. Over the weekend, they changed the seating arrangement, they changed the software programs, they changed the hardware. And when the people came back in on Monday, they were surprised. And after it was all announced, there was a lot of resistance. And they kept saying, oh, this is better hardware. It will be easier for you. Da, da, da. And they called me in. And so I talked to them. And I said, why are you resisting? And the answer was, they changed who we had lunch with. My lunch partner can be very important to me. So all the assumptions about the hard data, the hardware, the new supervisors that were assigned, different people sitting next to different people, and then assigning different lunch hours, it never occurred to them. And I think that kind of um, issue is an important one. I think also that there's another kind of issue, and that is I can do 2 and 3 initiatives at the same time. I worked for one company who wanted to do an IPO, but they also introduced a new enterprise system at the same time, and it was November. November, it gets close to December where a lot of things have to be finalized. So it was a timing issue. And to get an implementation of new systems, by the way, they had very complicated classifications. So some of them were franchised, some of them were company owned. They hadn't cleaned up their data in a long time. They had different systems for different areas. And they thought they could do all of that and then increase productivity so their IPO would look good. I think there's a great research that says organizations can only do one thing at a time. However, that doesn't mean you can only do a little bit. Um, there was a company, and they made one vision statement to improve safety. And what that led to was zero accidents, but it also led to engagement. It also led to productivity because there was this feeling that top management cared about them. And they also put in the in the work areas the number of days without accidents. If anyone came close to an accident, it was investigated. Again, this attention to the workforce and the workforce realities paid off in so many different ways that just saying I'm going to look at safety would many people would not have anticipated.
Interesting. Very interesting. So, I mean, you've studied leadership behavior across decades and cycles of change. Like, what major shifts do you personally see in leadership and consulting as we move through 2025 and beyond?
The changes in consulting, I think, number one, I would say that the consultant has to stay through execution. This consultant can't come in, produce a report, say what has to happen, and then leave. They have to stay through to make sure that things are achieved. Again, issues change. The consultant can help with that adaptability. I think that the other thing that I think is being paid more attention to is organizational design. How are we working together? And trying to flatten the organization. It's been decades now, but self-managed teams have proved their value. Quality teams have proved their value. Um, and I think that this requires a new attitude toward organizational structure or organizational power. Um, One of the things that people don't recognize, I go into organizations and ask, who has been promoted last? And then I ask why, because that why tells me what the leaders really care about. And there was one organization that really wanted their managers to coach and develop the workforce.
Mhm.
They changed one performance standard. They said that you only could get promoted if you had shown that you had mentored and coached your team. It was an overnight change. And this is why I so worry that people don't pay attention to the recognition, reward, promotion policies within an organization. I think the old image of a very successful salesperson getting promoted to a sales manager when that had not been his or her um, strength, it shows that that was one metric only that was being used, and that was sales output. Um, Research by Greenwood suggests that there have to be at least 7 measures, or people will not recognize the breadth of what they're being held accountable for. So, this whole concept of understanding the systems um, and, and making sure that you're going to reward something that will help you thrive, not just hit you the bottom line right away, is something that I think is been a frustration of mine with organizations because it's so hard to convey a change from past practice, because sales numbers are so easy to grasp and rank. We have to have a broader look at what our reward and promotion policies are going to be.
What are the biggest operational or leadership challenges you see organizations navigating right now?
Again, I would say it's the short termism. I was asked to give a presentation. It was going to last 40 minutes talking, 15, 20 minutes in Q&A. And my client asked me to guarantee that my 1 hour presentation will improve morale. How is that even possible? I think another frustration is that one time I started working with a CEO that wanted to improve labor management relations, and we were doing a great job. But then he took another job, and his successor didn't have that same orientation. So, you know, the turnover of clients can be, frustration. Um, and then organizations that are growing rapidly, the startup, the expansion phase, there's a exciting, high energy culture. And as the organization grows, that culture changes. And it's hard for an organizational leader to understand why that's happening and stop it or revert back to that high energy, high commitment culture that the organization had. Um, and I do think that there's a problem, particularly with founders of organizations, where they become so successful that they don't understand that to continue to be successful, they have to change. It's like somebody who's won a prize, and because I won, that validates what I'm doing, so I'm just going to keep doing it, and
Hmm.
that has um, it's very hard. And in a family organization, you can see the conflict between the founder generation and the next generation. Um, and if the next generation proposes something, um, the founder feels that, boy, that next generation doesn't know anything. I built this kind of thing. This is the way we're going to do it. So there's some frustrations there that take some time to work through.
That's a very interesting perspective. Mary, I want to spend a moment on your research because it's rare to see leadership work grounded in a data set of that size. I mean, you've surveyed over 6,000 leaders, and your book, Leadership Saving the Herd, translates those findings into practical guidance that leaders can actually use. So let's unpack that. After analyzing thousands of leadership mindsets, what actually stood out as the most important guidance that leaders need today?
That they need to think broadly and collect information from 6 different areas before they settle on what is the most critical for the organization, what is the most urgent, and where the trend is making it more critical. So if there's a problem that has been in existence and things are getting better, maybe not touch it. The trend is good. So how do we help people understand how to collect information from all 6 areas and then talk to people about the one that they have identified in a way where they are willing to bridge perspectives? In the book, the sheep had to leave the pasture because it had dried up, but they
Hmm.
had to swim across a river. And it was a great idea. People, the sheep needed to eat, but they were resistant. And one of the things they said was, well, I want to be sheared before I get in the water because wool can get heavy. A minor adjustment in the plan. They were sheared first. There were other adjustments made. But how often do leaders think about asking, what are the barriers you can foresee? How can we overcome them? That kind of detailed conversation that surfaces new ways of accomplishing the goal is not always part of a change initiative. And I think that what I also will say is that when I talk to leaders, they think their job is just to come up with a vision. And they basically want to delegate everything else. And that won't work. What I understand is not what I can pass on to somebody else and just say, go do it. Um, so I really have to, as the person coming up with the idea, as the head of the organization, I have to ask myself, do we have the skills to do this? Do we have that workforce, not just knowledgeable, but comfortable, proficient in doing it? What are their internal intangible incentives? Again, incentives are usually considered promotion, pay, benefits, office space, all those tangible ones. But we also have to look at the intangible ones. Do I feel I have a mission? Will I be helping my teammates? Will this help my career? I mean, all of those are intangible ones, but we look at what's in it for me, but we also have to look at what's in it for them. And we have to have that conversation. Then we have to make sure the resources are going to be available when they're needed. Sometimes resources are assigned up front, but 2 months later, they may have been assigned again. And so we have to make sure those resources are available. And I think the other thing that has to happen is that you can't leave the action plan to when we start. We have to lay out accountabilities. We have to lay out milestones. We have to detail our plan. Yes, we revise it, but also we have to monitor our progress so we know when to revise it. So those are things in a change effort that I lay out in the leader sheet book. And then I identify the questions under each one of those that a leader needs to ask to make sure they've done a full review of collecting the information, communicating it well, and providing the resources necessary. Because, I mean, there are many, well, I just take government. Government proposes things, which is great ideas. But getting the resources is a very different process and it delays things. So again, we have to look at resources in a variety of ways. And it's not just money and facilities and equipment. It's communication paths. It's how to resolve conflict. There's a lot of things within resources that are both tangible and systems oriented.
So, Mary, in your book, you describe a six-stage organizational cycle as part of your work. Could you walk us through those stages and explain how leaders can use them to navigate change more effectively?
Happy to. The startup is the phase that is the most exciting, the most tenuous, of course, because again, a lot of startups don't survive. But it is high energy, high engagement, lots of interaction between all levels of the organization. And it usually starts with a new idea, a new product, or a new way to provide a service. And again, a glorious time, high energy. The future looks extremely promising. As it gets some notoriety, um, it then starts to try to expand the marketplace. And that expansion can grow to the point where you have market penetration, but you've also gotten to the point where you're promising customers maybe more than you can deliver. Maybe the quality is an issue, maybe schedule becomes an issue. And so after that market growth stage, you have a systems stage. What are our systems going to be? Whether it's new information systems, new customer management systems, whatever else. It's trying to get organized so that you could serve a larger market. But if you don't systematize and you have great customers and you're not serving them well, you're going to lose them. So it really is a third stage. You have the startup, the market, and then the systems. And if you don't switch, you lose a customer, and it's much easier to keep a customer than it is to get a new customer. So after the systems are in place, then you look at how can we improve them? How can we improve quality? How can we improve our return, our ROI? Um, I noticed that many organizations that had been accepting credit cards now would rather have you pay in cash and you pay a little fee if you use a credit card. That's an optimization. Another optimization is, to have a new um, work design on your work floor so people aren't spending time too often going to supplies or verifying your what you've ordered is of the quality that you expect. I mean, those are all things that they are not as large an issue, but the opportunities are large. And then the next stage really is what is the culture we have, and do we have the bench strength? Particularly in a startup, that first closely knit group um, tends to stay together, but they very often are approximately the same age group. So, what has happened for leadership succession? What is our turnover? I mean, you could take a look at a Costco turnover and then take a look at another um, store selling some of the same merchandise, and the turnover is horrendous. Um, Pilferage in retail organizations comes partially because the employees aren't feeling connected to the organization. There are criminal motivation too, but all those issues revolve around the culture, and frequently people will try to put in a lot of controls, um, but I've done a lot of work in the government, and I actually, one of my long-term clients was the IRS. You can't imagine how many controls they have, but no matter how many they put in place, people find a way around them. And so the whole idea that control can create this loyal workforce just isn't going to fly. And then the last stage is how are we going to grow organically? Are we going to grow through merger? Can we partner with somebody? What is it that we see in the next, used to be 30 years, it's more like 5 to 10 years that, we need to prepare for. So, it's a startup, market penetration, institutionalization systems, optimization, culture and bench strength, and then more strategic perspective.
So, another one concept from your book, from leadership, that really resonated was don't feed the lion. So, for listeners who haven't read the book yet, what does that mean? And why is this lesson so critical for leadership teams today?
I think the archetype of leadership has been established as a strong, decisive, in control person. They're king of the organization, just like the lion is the king of the beast. And I will just say we need to look at that. The lion only has one thing they do. They don't feed the pride. They defend it. But in their defense, I will tell you they make some really bad decisions. A lion will attack 3 lions that are intruding. The odds aren't in their favor. And the fact is that a male lion has half the lifespan of a lioness who does all the hunting. Um, so it's a high ego, know it all, but it's short term. It's also one dimensional. And what I'm trying to do by talking about Feed the Lion is to ditch the roar. A roar can be heard 5 miles away. And I think that if I am in an organization where someone is shouting at me, it's not very effective. And a roar is like a shout. So again, this whole um, metaphor of a lion as our leader is not going to work with the workforce we have today and the challenges we have today. Actually, if we continue that archetype, we're introducing toxic leaders. And so I'm really suggesting again that what we need are more thoughtful, better decision makers, more inclusive, um, kind of an approach to leaders. So I'm saying don't feed the lion and keep that image going by praising it, by touting it with, the celebrity CEO. Some of these celebrities make you sound like they did it all by themselves, but they have organizations of 20,000 people. We just need to rethink leadership. And that's part of the reason I call my book Leadership, because I wanted to take a different animal and one that people discount because they're just followers, they're just conformists. But sheep have a sheepdog, sheep have a shepherd. They are intelligent. They learn how to roll over metal gates for cows, um, and they're mischievous. So you wouldn't need a sheepdog and a shepherd. And so I'm trying to point out, I know that the sheep are not the most intelligent. They're not the elephant. They're not the dolphin. But that doesn't make them stupid. And I think that we tend to assume that the people on the front line just have limitations. I worked for a company, and the front line was going on strike. And management said, no problem. We can do their jobs. We're the managers. They tried for a couple of days. It was so pathetic. The strike ended very quickly because you don't know how to solder. You don't know how to put together something. You don't know how to order from the vendors. I mean, we need to respect all the people in our organization. Everyone contributes, and not this just one high profile king.
Awesome. And based on your research, what signals should leaders be paying closer attention to today? Like, where do leaders most often misread what's actually happening inside their organizations?
I think they ask too many close ended questions. If I ask you, are you happy working for the organization? You know what to say, yes. But if I ask the question, what should we start doing that we're not doing? What should we stop doing that we're doing too much? What should we start doing um, in one department to see if it will work? There was someone, I don't remember who said that when you ask a question that's open ended or that's more than 8 words in it, people learn how to answer. So we have to make sure that our questions are open ended and do not telegraph what we want to hear back. And that's something leaders can do. One of the things I also recommend is creating lateral networks. So, once every once in a while, whether it's 6 months or what, get all the supervisors together. Let them talk and decide what their issues are. Let the professionals who aren't managers get together and talk. It, it's so refreshing for them to learn that other people have the same issues, same concerns, and that some of them have answers. They've solved the problem. So this whole concept of lateral communication, I think can really benefit organizations. I think that communication has been seen as just hierarchical and not lateral.
Right. It's a very unique perspective. Mary, so what truly differentiates your situational mindsets from more traditional leadership models?
The traditional leadership model looks at me internally. It was based on the work of Carl Jung, and great work. And it helps people. Many of them take that insight home because it's how I work. And then there's the traits, do I have courage? Do I have, the stamina needed? And then there's the competency work, which is say, do I know how to operate that system? Do I know how to create, um, how to produce a new sales kind of thing? All of those are looking at me internally. They are not looking at my ability to deliver results that are sustainable. I can deliver results for the short term. And I've seen many times, and particularly in government, where the average tenure of an executive in government is basically 9 months because I do a great job. It builds my resume, so I'll just move on. So I think that we need to have a better understanding of how to do the analysis of our current situation and then select the one thing we need to do that is urgent, that has a criticality to it, and the trend is making it more significant. So I'm looking at something, it's not emotional intelligence, it isn't anything inside me in terms of a person. It is my ability as a in an organization to understand what situation we're in and what we need to do next. It's better decision making. It's critical thinking. Um, you know, everybody says it's common sense, and I just have to say, uh, common sense isn't always very common. So I'm adding an external output, out performance results, focus um, that I think complements. It doesn't remove the value of anything else, but I think it adds a new dimension.
So looking ahead, what's next for your work and for enterprise management? Are you planning anything, any new research tools, programs, any new ways of helping leaders apply these ideas?
I think that I'm going to continue to do more research on our models and help organizations um, become more transparent, become more inclusive, and recognize that they constantly have to change. I I am not 10 years old. I have seen change for decades, but I don't remember anything like the pace of change that we're in now. And I think that means that we have to be much more insightful and open minded so that we work with others, we're willing to collaborate. I'm willing to say, tell me more. I'm willing to say, I made a mistake. Um, it's a very different atmosphere that we are in now than we were in 1955 when the Fortune 500 was created, that list of companies. I think there's only 35 left of the original 500. That's been the turnover. And I think leaders need to see that and recognize that agility um, is truly critical, and effective ability to introduce and execute change, not just introduce it. They got to stay in the game until it actually gets done through the skills analysis, through the incentives, through the resources, and through the action planning.